Hello everyone, this is Andrew. Welcome to Keen on America.
On July 4th, 2026, America will be 250 years old, an anniversary that will, no doubt, be greeted with a mixture of celebration, contemplation, and resignation. In Keen on America, Andrew talks not just about the American past and present, but also speculates on its future. What, Andrew asks, will be the 21st century fate of this now venerable American Republic?
Hello everybody, it is May the 6th, a Tuesday, 2025. And the tech media is dominated today by OpenAI's plan to convert its for-profit business to a non-profit side. That's how the Financial Times is reporting it. New York Times says that OpenAI, and I'm quoting them, backtracks on plans to drop non-profit control. And the Wall Street Journal, always very authoritative on the tech front, leads with OpenAI abandons planned for-profit conversion. The Wall Street Journal piece is written by Keach Hagey, who is perhaps America's leading authority on OpenAI. She was on the show a couple of months ago talking about Sam Altman's superpower, which is as a salesman. Keach is also the author of an upcoming book. It's out in a couple of weeks. The Optimist, Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the race to invent the future. And I'm thrilled that Keach has been remarkably busy today, as you can imagine, found a few minutes to come onto the show. So, Keach, what is Sam selling here? You say he's a salesman. He's always selling something or other. What's the sell here?
Well, the sell here is that this is not a big deal, right? The sell is that this thing they've been trying to do for about a year, which is to make their company less weird, is not going to work. And as he was talking to the press yesterday, he was trying to suggest that they're still going to be able to fundraise, that these folks that they promised that if you give us money, we're going to convert to a for-profit and it's going to be a much more normal investment for you, that they're still going to get that money, which is a pretty tough thing. So that's what he's selling, is that this is not disruptive to the future of OpenAI.
For people who are just listening, I'm looking at Keach's face and I'm sensing that she's doing everything she can not to burst out laughing. Is that fair, Keach?
Well, it'll remain to be seen, but I do think it will make it a lot harder for them to raise money. Even Sam himself said as much during the talk yesterday, that investors would like to be able to have some say over what happens to their money. And if you're controlled by a nonprofit organization, that's really tough. And what they were trying to do was convert to a new world where investors would have a seat at the table, because as we all remember, when Sam got briefly fired almost 2 years ago, the investors just helplessly sat on the sidelines and didn't have any say in the matter. Microsoft had absolutely no role to play other than kind of cajoling and offering him a job on the sidelines. So if you're going to try to raise money, you really need to be able to promise some kind of control, and that's become a lot harder.
And the ramifications more broadly on this announcement will extend to Microsoft and Microsoft stock. I think their stock is down today. We'll come to that in a few minutes. Keach, there was an interesting piece in this week on AI hallucinations are getting worse. Of course, OpenAI is the dominant AI company with their ChatGPT. But is this also a kind of hallucination? What exactly is going on here? I have to admit, and I always thought, I certainly know more about tech than I do about other subjects, which isn't always saying very much. But either you're a non-profit or you're a for-profit. Is there some sort of hallucinogenic, if that's the right word, hallucinogenic process going on where Sam is trying to sell us on the idea that OpenAI is simultaneously a for-profit and a non-profit company?
Well, that's kind of what it is right now. That's what it has sort of been since 2019, or when it spun up this strange structure where it had a for-profit underneath a nonprofit. And what we saw in the firing is that doesn't hold. There's going to come a moment when those two worlds are going to collide, and it nearly destroyed the company. So what is going to be challenging going forward is that basic destabilization, that like unstable structure remains, even though now everything is so much bigger, there's so much more money coursing through it, and it's so much more important for the economy. It's a dangerous position.
It's not so dangerous. You seem still faintly amused. I have to admit, I'm more than faintly amused. It's not too bothersome for us because we don't have any money in OpenAI. But for SoftBank and the other participants in the recent $40 billion round of investment in OpenAI, this must be, to say the least, rather disconcerting.
That was one of the biggest surprises from the press conference yesterday. Sam Altman was asked point blank, is SoftBank still going to give you this sort of second chunk, this $30 billion second chunk that was contingent upon being able to convert to a for-profit? And he said, quite simply, yes. Now, who knows what goes on in behind the scenes? I think we're going to find out probably a lot more about that. There are many unanswered questions, but it's not great, right? It's definitely not great for investors.
Well, you have to guess at the very minimum, SoftBank would be demanding better terms. They're not just going to do the same thing. I mean, it suddenly gives them an additional ace in their hand in terms of negotiation. I mean, this is not some sort of little startup. This is $30 or $40 billion. I mean, it's an astonishing number, and presumably the non-public conversations are very interesting. I'm sure, Keach, you would like to know what's being said.
Don't know yet, but I think your analysis is pretty smart on this matter.
So if you had to guess, Sam is the consummate salesman. What did he tell SoftBank before April to close the round? And what is he telling them now? I mean, how has the message changed?
One of the things that we can see a little bit about this from the messaging that he gave to the world yesterday, which is this is going to be a simpler structure. It is going to be a slightly more normal structure. They are changing the structure a little bit. So although the nonprofit is going to remain in charge, the thing underneath it, the for-profit, is going to change its structure a little bit and become kind of a little bit more normal. It's not going to have this capped profit thing where the investors are capped at 100 times what they put in. So parts of it are going to become more normal. For employees, it's probably going to be easier for them to get equity and things like that. So I'm sure that's part of what he's selling, that this new structure is going to be a little bit better, but it's not going to be as good as what they were trying to do.
Sam, I mean, clearly he has sold it. I mean, as we joked earlier when we talked, Sam could sell ice to the Laplanders or sand to the Saudis, but these people know Sam. It's no secret that he's a remarkable salesman. That means that sometimes you have to think carefully about what he's saying. What's the impact on him? To what extent is this decision one more chip on the Altman brand?
It's a setback for sure. And it's kind of a win for Elon Musk, his rival, because of course, Elon has been suing him. Elon has been trying to block this very conversion. And in the end, it seems like it was actually the attorneys general of California and Delaware that really put the nail in the coffin here. So there's still a lot to find out about exactly how it all shook out. There were actually huge campaigns as well, like in the streets, billboards, posters, polls saying, trying to put pressure on the attorney general to block this thing. So it was a broad coalition, I think, that opposed the conversion, and you can even see that a little bit in their speech. But you got to admit that Elon probably looked at this and was happy.
And I'm sure Elon used his own X platform to promote his own agenda. Is this an example, Keach, in a weird kind of way, of the plebiscitary politics now of Silicon Valley? Is that titans like Altman and Musk are fighting out complex corporate economic battles in the naked public of social media?
Yes, in the naked public of social media, but what we're also seeing here is that it's become through the apparatus of government. So we're seeing, Elon is in the Doge office, and this conversion is really happening in the state AG's houses. That's what's sort of interesting to me, is these like private fights have now expanded to fill both state and federal government.
Last time we talked, I couldn't find the photo, but there was a wonderful photo of, I think it was Larry Ellison and Sam Altman in the Oval Office with Trump, and Ellison looked very excited. He looked extremely old as well, and Altman looked very awkward. And it's surprising to see Altman look awkward, because generally he doesn't. Has Trump played a role in this, or is he keeping out of it?
As far as my current reporting right now, we have no reporting that Trump himself was directly involved. I can't go further than that right now.
Meaning that you know something that you're not willing to acknowledge.
Just, I hope keep your subscription to the Wall Street Journal on what role the White House played, I would say. But as far as that awkwardness, I don't know if you noticed that there was a box that day for Masayoshi Son to
oh yeah, and Son was in the office too, right? Mm-hmm. That was the third person.
So it was a box on the podium, which I think contributed to the awkwardness of the day, because he's not a tall man.
Right, to put it politely. The way that OpenAI spun it in classic Sam Altman terms is new funding to build towards AGI. So it's their Altman-esque use of the public to vindicate this new investment. Is this just more, quote unquote, and this is my word, you don't have to agree with it, just sales pitch, or might even be dishonesty here? I mean, the reality is new funding to build towards AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. It's not new funding to build towards AGI. It's new funding to build towards OpenAI. There's no public benefit of any of this, is there?
Well, what they're saying is that the nonprofit will be capitalized and will sort of be hiring up and doing a bunch more things that it wasn't really doing. It will have programs and initiatives and all of that, which really, as someone who studied Sam's life, this sounds really a lot like what he did at Y Combinator. When he was at head of Y Combinator, he also spun up a nonprofit arm, which is actually what OpenAI grew out of. So I think in Sam's mind, a nonprofit is a place to go sort of hash out your ideas. It's a place to kind of have pet projects grow. That's where he did things like his UBI study. So I can sort of see that once the AGs are like, this is not going to happen, he's like, great, we'll just make a big nonprofit and I'll get to do all these projects I've always wanted to do.
But didn't he get thrown out of Y Combinator by Paul Graham for that?
Yes, a little bit. I would say there's a general mutiny for too much of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's true. People didn't love it, and they felt like he took his eye off the ball a little bit, because one of those projects became OpenAI, and he became kind of obsessed with it and stopped paying attention. So look, maybe OpenAI will spawn the next thing, right? And he'll get distracted by that and move on.
No coincidence, of course, that Sam went on to become CEO of OpenAI. What does it mean for the broader AI ecosystem? I noted earlier you brought up Microsoft. I mean, I think you've already written on this, and lots of other people have written about the fact that the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft has cooled dramatically, as well as between Nadella and Altman. What does this mean for Microsoft? Is it a big deal?
They have been hashing this out for months. So it is a big deal in that it will, change the structure of their most important partner. But even before this, Microsoft and OpenAI were sort of locked in negotiations over how large and how Microsoft's stake in this new OpenAI will be valued. And that still has to be determined, regardless of whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit in charge. And their interests are diverging. So those those negotiations are not as warm as they maybe would have been a few years ago.
It's a form of polyamory, isn't it? Like we have in Silicon Valley, everyone has sex with everybody else, to put it politely.
Well, OpenAI does have a new partner in Oracle, and I would expect them to have many more in terms of like cloud computing partners going forward. It's just too much risk for any one company to build these huge and expensive data centers, not knowing that if OpenAI is going to exist in a certain number of years. So they have to diversify.
Keach, this is amusing and entertaining, and Altman, is a remarkable individual, able to sell anything to anyone. But at what point are we really on the Titanic here? And there is such a thing as an iceberg, a real thing, whatever Donald Trump or other manufacturers of ontologies might suggest. And at some point, this thing is going to end in a massive disaster.
Are you talking about the existential?
I'm not talking about the Titanic. I'm talking about OpenAI. I mean, Parmi Olson, who's the other great authority on OpenAI, who won the FT Book of the Year last year. She's been on the show a couple of times. She wrote in Bloomberg that OpenAI can't have its money both ways, and that's what Sam is trying to do. My point is that we can all point out, the contradictions and the hypocrisy and all the rest of it. But there are laws of gravity when it comes to economics. And at a certain point, this thing is going to crash, isn't it? I mean, what's the metaphor? Is it Enron? Is it Sam Bankman-Fried? What kind of examples in history do we need to look at to try and figure out what really is going on here?
That's certainly one possibility, and there are a good number of people who believe that.
Believe what? Enron or Sam Bankman-Fried?
Well, the internal tensions cannot hold, right? I don't know if fraud is even necessary so much as just we've seen it. We've seen it already happen once, right? The company almost completely collapsed one time, and those contradictions are still there. So,
and when you say it happened, is that when Sam got pushed out, or was that another something else?
No, that's it. Because Sam almost got pushed out, and then all the funders would go away. So Sam needs to be there for them to continue raising money in the way that they have been raising money, and that's really going to be the question. How long can that go on? He's a young man; could go on a very long time, but yeah, that I think that's really will determine whether it's a disaster or not.
But how long can it go on? I mean, how long can Sam have it both ways?
Well, there's a dream.
I mean, maybe he can close this last round, but can he go? I mean, he's going to need to raise more than 40 billion. This is such a competitive space. Tens of billions of dollars are being invested almost on a monthly basis. So this is not the end of the road, this $40 billion investment.
Oh, no. And, there's talk of IPO at some point, maybe not even that far away. Don't even let me wrap my mind around what it would be for a nonprofit to have a controlling share in a public company.
More hallucinations economically.
Yeah, but I mean, IPO is the exit for investors, right? That's the model. That is the Silicon Valley model. So it's going to have to come to that one way or another.
But how does it work internally? I mean, for the guys, the sales guys, the people who are actually doing the business at OpenAI, they've been pretty successful this year. The numbers are astonishing. But how is this going to impact, if it's a nonprofit, how does this impact the process of selling, of building product, of all the other internal mechanics of this high-priced startup?
I don't think it will affect it enormously in the short term. It's really just a question of, can they continue to raise money for the enormous amount of compute that they need? So far, he's been able to do that, right? And if that slows up in any way, they're going to be in trouble, because as Sam has said many times, AI has to be cheap to be actually useful. So in order to, for it to be widespread, for it to flow like water, all of those things, it's got to be cheap, and that's going to require massive investment in data centers.
But how, ultimately people are putting money in so that they get the money back. This is not this is not a non-profit endeavor to put 40 billion from SoftBank. SoftBank is not in the non-profit business. So they're going to need their money back. And the only way they generally, in my understanding, getting money back is by going public, especially with these numbers. How can a non-profit go public?
It's a great question. That's what I'm just raising. I mean, this is, you talk to folks, this is what's like often the misty distance for them. It's a fascinating question, and one that we're going to try to answer this week.
But you look amused. I'm no financial genius. Everyone must be asking the same question.
Well, the way that they've said it is that the for-profit the nonprofit will control the for-profit and be the largest shareholder in it, but the rest of the shares could be held by public markets theoretically. That's a great question, though.
And lawyers all over the world must be rubbing their hands. I mean, in the very best case, it's going to be lawsuits on this, people suing them up the wazoo.
It's absolutely true. You should see my inbox right now. It's just like lawyers.
Yeah, my wife is the head of litigation. I don't know if I should be saying this publicly. Anyway, I am. She's the head of litigation at Google, and she lost some of her senior people, and they all went over to AI. I'm betting that they regret going over there. It can't be much fun being a lawyer at OpenAI at the moment.
I don't know. I think it'd be great fun. I think you'd have like enormous challenges and have lots of billable hours. Unless,
of course, they're personally being sued.
Yeah, hopefully not. But I mean, look, it is a strange and unprecedented situation.
To what extent, Keach, is this, if not Shakespearean, could have been written by some Greek dramatist? To what extent is this symbolic of all the hype and salesmanship and dishonest of Silicon Valley? And in a sense, maybe this is a final scene or a penultimate scene in the Silicon Valley story of doing good for the world and yet, of course, reaping obscene profit.
I think it's a little bit about trying to have your cake and eat it too, right? Trying to have the aura of altruism, but also make something and make a lot of money. And what it seems like today is that if you started as a nonprofit, it's like a black hole. Like you can never get out. There's no way to get out. And that idea was just like maybe one step too clever when they set it up in the beginning, right? It seemed like too good to be true because it was. And it might end up really limiting the growth of the company. We'll see.
Is Sam completely in charge here? I mean, a number of the founders have left. Musk, of course, when you and I talked a couple of months ago, OpenAI came out of conversations between Musk and Sam. Is he doing this on his own? Does he have lieutenants, people who he can rely on?
Yeah, I mean, he does. He has a number of folks that have been there, a long time.
Who are they? I mean, do we know their names?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, like Brad Lightcap and Jason Kwan, and just they're and Greg Brockman, of course, still there. So there are a core group of executives that have been there pretty much from the beginning, close to it, that he does trust. But if you're asking, like, is Sam really in control of this whole thing? I believe the answer is yes, right? He is on the board of this nonprofit, and and that nonprofit will choose the board of the for-profit. So as long as that's the case, he's in charge.
How divided is OpenAI? I mean, one of the things that came out of the big crisis, what was it, 18 months ago when they tried to push him out, it was clearly a profoundly divided company between those who believed in the nonprofit mission versus the for-profit mission. Are those divisions still as acute within the company itself? It must be growing. I don't know how many thousands of people work there.
It has grown very fast. It is not as acute in my experience. There was a time when there was really sort of a warring of tribes. And after the blip, as they call it, a lot of those more safety-focused people that subscribe to effective altruism, left or were kind of pushed out. So Sam took over and kind of cleaned house.
But then, aren't those people also very concerned that it appears as if Sam's having his cake and eating it, having it both ways, talking about the company being a nonprofit, but behaving as if it is a for-profit?
Oh, yeah, they're very concerned. In fact, a number of them have signed on to this open letter to the attorneys general that dropped, I don't know, a week and a half ago, something like that. You can see a number of former OpenAI employees, whistleblowers, and others saying this very thing, that the AG should block this because it was supposed to be a charitable mission from the beginning, and no amount of fancy footwork is going to make it okay to toss that overboard.
And I mean, in the best possible case, can Sam... the one thing I think you and I talked about last time is Sam clearly he's not driven by money. There's something else. There's some other demonic force here. Could he theoretically reinvent the company so that it becomes a kind of AI overlord, a non-profit AI overlord for our 21st century AI age?
Wow. Well, I think he sometimes thinks of it as like an AI layer, and is this my overlord? Might be,
Well, as long as it's not made in China. I hope it's not made in China. Is it? Yeah. Wave it up. I heard it's now made in India, or maybe in Detroit or something.
It's a very old one, so it's okay. But it's certainly my attention overlord, right? So I don't know about the AI overlord part. Although it's interesting, Sam from the very beginning has wanted there to be a democratic process to control what kind of AI gets built and what are the guardrails for AGI.
As long as he's the one determining it, right?
Well, he talked about it a lot in the very beginning of the company when things were smaller and not so crazy. And what really strikes me is he doesn't really talk about that much anymore. But what we did just see is some advocacy organizations that kind of function in that exact way. They have voters all over the world, and they all voted on, hey, we want you guys to go and try to block this nonprofit conversion. So it's sort of ironic that it was Sam's opponents that ended up having this like democratic structure for deciding the future of AI and used it to kind of block what he was trying to do.
What are the implications for OpenAI's competitors? There's obviously Anthropic. Microsoft, we talked about a little bit, although it's a partner and a competitor simultaneously. And then, of course, there's Google. I assume this is all good news for the competition.
Absolutely.
And, of course, XAI.
It is good news, especially for a company like XAI. I was just speaking to an XAI investor today who was crowing. Because those companies don't have this weird structure. Only OpenAI has this strange nonprofit structure. So if you are an investor who wants to have some exposure to AI, it might just not be worth the headache to deal with the uncertainty around the nonprofit, even though OpenAI is like the clear leader. Might be a better bet to invest in Anthropic or XAI or something else that has just a normal for-profit structure.
Yeah, and it's hard to actually, quote unquote, out-Trump Elon Musk on economic subterfuge, but Altman seems to have done that. I mean, Musk, he folded X into XAI, it was a little bit of controversy, but he seems to have got away with it. So there is a deep hostility between these two men, which I'm assuming is being compounded by this process.
Yes, absolutely. This is a win for Elon. All these legal cases, and Elon trying to buy OpenAI. Remember that bid a few months ago where he actually put a number on it. All that was about trying to block the for-profit conversion because he's trying to stop OpenAI in its tracks. He also claims they've abandoned their mission, but it's always important to note that it's coming from a competitor.
Could that be a way out of this seeming box, Keach, that a company like XAI or Microsoft or Google, or that probably wouldn't happen on the antitrust front, would buy OpenAI as maybe a nonprofit and then transform it into a for-profit company?
maybe you and Sam should get together and hash that out. That's the kind
Well,
of
Sam, I'm
wild...
available to be hired if you're watching. I'll probably charge less than your current consigliere. What's his name? Who's the consigliere who's working with him on this, Keach?
You mean Chris Lehane?
Yes, Chris Lehane, the Eagle.
How's
Lehane holding up in this? Do you think he's getting any sleep?
Well, he's like a policy guy. I'm sure this has been challenging for everybody. But look, you are pointing to something that I think is real, which is there will probably be consolidation at some point, down the line in AI. And if that's
coming back, I mean, I know you're not an expert on the maybe sort of corporate legal stuff, but is it in theory possible to buy a nonprofit? I don't even know how you buy a nonprofit and then turn it into a for-profit. I mean, is that one way out of this cul-de-sac?
I really don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. I can't think of another example of it happening. So I'm going to go with no, but I don't know.
Because there are no equivalents. Sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No, I mean, so I was actually asking a little bit, are there precedents for this? And someone mentioned Blue Cross Blue Shield had gone from being a nonprofit to a for-profit successfully in the past. But it doesn't happen.
And you seem a little amused by that. I mean, anyone who uses U.S. healthcare as a model, I think, might regret it. So your book, The Optimist, is out in a couple of weeks. When did you stop writing it?
The end of December, end of last year, was pencils fully down.
And I'm sure you told the publisher that was far too long a window. 7 months on Silicon Valley is like 7 centuries.
It was actually a very, very tight timeline. They turned it around like incredibly fast. Usually it's much
remarkable. Yeah,
exactly.
Publishing is they're such quick actors, aren't they?
In this case, they actually were. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, they always say that 6 months or 7 months is fast, but it is actually possible to publish a book in probably a week or two if you really choose to. But in all seriousness, back to this question, I mean, and I want everyone to read the book. It's a wonderful book and an important book. It's the best book on OpenAI out. What would you have written differently? Is there an extra chapter on this? I know you warned about a lot of this stuff in the book, so it must make you feel in some ways quite vindicated.
I mean, you're asking if I'd had a longer deadline, what would I have liked to include? Well,
if you were writing it now with this news under your belt.
Absolutely. So, I mean, two things, I guess. Definitely this news about the for-profit conversion failing just shows the limits of Sam's power. So that's pretty interesting because as the book was closing, we're not really sure what those limits are. And the other one is Trump. So, Trump had happened, but we did not yet understand what Trump 2.0 really meant at the time that the book was closing. And at that point, it looked like Sam was in the cold. It wasn't clear how he was going to get inside Trump's inner circle. And then lo and behold, he was there on day one of the Trump administration, sharing a podium with him, announcing that Stargate AI infrastructure investment. So I'm sad that didn't make it into the book because it really just shows the kind of remarkable character he is.
He's Zelig, but then we all know what happened to Woody Allen in the end.
Yeah, I don't know.
In all seriousness, and it's hard to keep a straight face here, Keach, and you're trying, although you're not doing a very good job. What's going to happen? I know it's an easy question to ask and a hard one to answer, but ultimately this thing has to end in catastrophe, doesn't it? I mean, I use the analogy of the Titanic. There are real icebergs out there.
Sure. Look, there could be a data breach. I do think that.
Well, but that's another. But there could be data breaches if it was a non-profit or for-profit. I mean, in terms of this whole issue of trying to have it both ways.
Yeah. Look, they might run out of money, right? I mean, that's one very real possibility. They might run out of money and have to be bought by someone. As you said, that is a totally real possibility right now.
What would happen if they couldn't raise any more money? I mean, what was the last round, the $40 billion round? What was the overall valuation? About 350 billion, wasn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's say that they begin to, because they've got, what are their hard costs? Monthly burn rate. I mean, it's billions of just.
Well, the issue is that they're spending more than they are making. So.
Right, but you're right. So let's say in 18 months they run out of runway. What would people be buying?
Right, maybe some IP, some servers somewhere. And one of the big questions that is yet unanswered in AI is, will it ever economically make sense? Right now, we are all buying the possibility of in the future that the costs will eventually come down and it will kind of be useful. But that's still a promise, and it's possible that won't ever happen. I mean, all these companies are this way, right? They are spending far more than they're making, and it's possible that it will never actually become a profitable business.
And that's the best case scenario.
Worst case scenario is the killer robots murder us all.
No, what I meant in the best case scenario is that people are actually still, without all the blow up. I mean, people are actually paying for AI. I mean, on the one hand, the OpenAI product is, would you say it's successful, more or less successful than it was when you finished the book in December of last year?
Oh, yes, much more successful. I mean, vastly more users, and the product is vastly better. I mean, even in my experience, like I don't know if you play with it every day. I mean,
I use Anthropic.
I use both Claude and ChatGPT, and I mean, they're both great, and I find them vastly more useful today than I did even when I was closing the book. So it's great. I don't know if it's really a great business that they're only charging me $20, right? That's great for me, but I don't think it's like long-term tenable for them.
Well, Keach Hagey, your new book, The Optimist, your new old book, The Optimist, Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the Race to Invent the Future is out in a couple of months. I hope you're writing a sequel. Maybe you should make it The Pessimist.
I think you might be the pessimist, Andrew.
Well, you're as pessimistic as me. You just have a nicer smile. I mean, in all reality, what's the most optimistic thing that can come out of this?
The most optimistic is that this becomes a product that is actually useful, but doesn't vastly exacerbate inequality.
No, I take the point on that, but in terms of this current story of this non-profit versus profit, what's the best case scenario?
I guess the best case scenario is they find their way to an IPO before completely imploding.
With the assumption that a non-profit can do an IPO.
Yes. That they find the right lawyers from wherever they are and make it happen.
Well, AI continues its hallucinations, and they're not in the product themselves. I think they're in their companies. One of the best, if not the best, authority, our guide to all these hallucinations in a corporate level is Keach Hagey. Her new book, The Optimist, Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the Race to Invent the Future is out in a couple of weeks. Essential reading for anyone who wants to understand Sam Altman as the consummate salesman. And I think one thing we can say for sure, Keach, is this is not the end of the story. Is that fair?
Very fair. Not the end of the story.